Today, we're going to hear from an investor who started over after 15 years of wholesaling. And we're going to dive into what he would do differently if he were to start over again after wholesaling over 750 houses and transitioning now to self-storage. Guys, welcome back to the Evergreen Marketing Show. And it's a treat because this is my first time hosting an Evergreen Marketing podcast and one in person for probably years. Well, first time ever for Evergreen Marketing Show.
Love it.
But the second thing is Brady usually gets a chance to really interview people. And I do the weekly live shows. And so this is a treat, Alex, having you on here, buddy.
Brother, honored. Thank you.
And guys, I'm going to introduce you to Mr. Alex Pardo here in a second, who's sitting across the table from me. If you're listening to this on the podcast, go over to our YouTube channel because you get a chance to actually see an in-person, in-studio podcast where we're sitting across the table from each other. But the reason that this episode is a treat for y'all, whether you're a wholesaler or a flipper or real estate agent or a home services business, I don't care what it is. We're talking about an entrepreneur journey from a dream to building a really successful company, wholesaling 750 plus homes in the Florida area, to having the challenges that we all have as entrepreneurs and having to make really big decisions on what do we change. We talked right before this on identity crisis, and Alex made some big changes, and we're going to dive into what those changes were, why, how he did them. And hopefully you guys and gals can kind of learn some of those things. Because what I want to do is, let's say you're in year one or year two or year three of your wholesaling or flipping business or as an agent. I want you to learn from these cues so you can maybe make these adjustments early on. Yeah. And make that business thrive or build the exact business that you want. But dude, welcome on the podcast.
My man, I love it. So excited to be here.
So it was like, what was it? A few months ago, you texted and you're like, dude, we should hop on a podcast together. And I immediately went, no, you need to come out here to Oregon and we'll record the podcast here, but also come out for Carrot Camp. So Alex just wrapped up a couple days at Carrot Camp. Dude, how was that? Like, what did you think it was going to be?
Brother, I have been a part of so many masterminds and communities for, going over 15 years. And I shared with the guys, man, easily one of the top 3 I've been to, man. Just like and I've shared this with you several times, brother, but the culture that you guys have built here in Carrot, the friendliness, the team member, you guys going above and beyond, the content, the people that I got to connect with and just build meaningful relationships with. I mean, just coming out of here on a high, man, and just excited to implement and just continue to stay in contact with good people.
Yep. Dude, the people's where it's at.
That's it.
Right? I mean, our relationship, giving everyone context here. So we first met 2008, 2009, around there. We roomed together in Vegas, didn't we? At one of those events with who was with us?
Oh man, there were so many people, like all the thought leaders and influencers in the REI space. Yeah, so many people, dude. I think that was at the Palms or something. I don't know, but it's such a good time. And I look, man, over 13, 14 years later, like you and I are still friends, man, where I've learned so much from you throughout the years. I'm inspired.
We've done a deal or two together.
That's right.
Back in the day.
That's right.
Was fun.
Yeah.
And guys, one of the reasons I want to have Alex on the podcast, I mean, there's a lot of reasons. Number one, like I said, I've known him for ages, so I've seen the journey. Yeah, when Alex and I met, the wholesaling business was crushing it. He was training people how to do the same thing, and just one of the most amazing ethical guys. I'm looking at our core values poster back there, and be a beacon of positivity and possibility. Your energy when I'm around you, I love it. I'll have fun and be different. Amazing dude. Like everything on this thing, like Alex epitomizes these things. So pumped to have you on here. Dude, let's start for people, like introduce yourself. What do you do now? Yeah. Where do you live? Things like that. And then we're going to go back in time to when you started your wholesaling business and then how you scaled it over the years. But where you at right now?
Absolutely. So name's Alex Pardo, born and raised in Miami. So you know this, Trevor, but my family is Cuban. Yeah. My sister and I were born in Miami. I didn't come from like a line of entrepreneurs. I'm the first one. I was taught, like I'm sure many listeners, like, hey, go like get good grades, go to college, like go get a job. And that's what I did. But for me, I always had like this fire inside of me that I wanted to like blaze my own trail. I wanted to do something. I didn't know what. I was backpacking around Europe back in 2005. Yeah. And I was just traveling from country to country on trains. And that's when I started to immerse myself in the personal development books. The classics, right?
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, dude, I'm going to move back home and I'm going to be moving back in with my parents. At 25 years old, like that's not a good look, right? Single, like that's
so your
not.
wife wasn't in the picture.
No. I was single. I didn't even know my wife at the time, and so like, man, this is not how I drew it up in my head. So I was really motivated to like succeed and do something. But for me, the biggest pain was going back and getting a job.
Yep.
So I ended up just diving into real estate, man. I went to an event and I got into pre-foreclosures, and my first deal was a short sale. Made $44,000. That first deal.
That stuff gets you hooked right there.
That's it. Now, granted, that wasn't the average, but that just happened to be my first one.
Yep.
And man, I haven't looked back. I've been unemployable ever since. And so, did wholesaling for a good 15 years. And then as we're going to talk, I transitioned into storage about 3.5, 4 years ago. Yep. So today I own 3 facilities, about 838 units. I'm under contract on another one now.
Cool.
And really I get to like now use storage to pour into people that either want to build a bridge from residential over into commercial, specifically storage, or that just want to do it as a bolt-on.
Yep.
Like I know we're going to talk about that, but that was one of the biggest mistakes I ever made, is not taking that active earned income and putting it into cash flow producing assets.
Yeah. Dude, the cool thing about this, guys, so Alex talked about the wholesaling business. We're going to dive into that deep here in a bit. But then he talked about the storage, right? And we here at Carrot, we always talk about evergreen and hamster wheel, right? And usually we talk about it from the perspective of marketing. That we want to help you guys get off of the hamster wheel of marketing and get on, evergreen marketing, something that you do once and then it pays you or feeds you for a long time.
Yeah.
But we also here at Carrot talk about evergreen income and hamster wheel income. And just by nature, it's like the double-edged sword, right? Wholesaling, flipping, real estate agent, and most jobs in the world, right? Most jobs in the world are active income earned jobs. You have to keep on doing the work, and it is a hamster wheel. You have to keep on the hamster wheel to make that happen, or you have to hire people to be on the hamster wheel for you, right? And so the goal that we always have here at Carrot is we want to help you build that business of freedom and impact. And it requires us to have a longer term plan in our wholesaling and flipping business to be able to take capital and put it into assets. And so we are going to talk about what Alex is doing with capital into self-storage assets here in a bit. Okay, guys. So think about what you want to do to create your evergreen income. So going back, you got the first deal done. What did you do after that? So how did you transition to wholesaling? Did you wholesale yourself for a while? Where'd the team come in? Kind of fast forward us through the first couple of years maybe, and then we'll talk about.
Yeah, man, decade. So I'll start here. The best deal I've ever did, Trevor, I lost $51,000.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And it was actually $102,000 between myself and a partner. So up until 2007, I always viewed coaches and communities as expenses.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, you and I view them as investments. Well, decided to get involved in my first luxury fix and flip in 2007. Yeah. Just by the date, you already know what happened. Oh, yeah. We lost our shirt. Thank God it didn't put me under. But from that experience, I ended up hiring a coach. And then, man, for the first probably 5 years of my career, I was a one-man show. I did not own a business. The business, quote unquote, owned me. It was a high paying job. And I read the 4-hour work week and I'm like, let me go hire a virtual assistant. Hired a virtual assistant, didn't know what I was doing, didn't have enough work for them. And that's when I started to learn about how to lead, how to manage. And that's an area that I'm learning so much from you on, right? And how you've grown Carrot. And then in 2013 is when I really got serious, man. And I hired an acquisition manager. I hired an assistant. I started building out the team. And yet what I found fast forwarding years later is that I had created a different kind of hamster wheel. Like I wasn't the one meeting with sellers and doing the marketing, but I was managing the team and I felt like I was still putting out fires. And it was my inability to lead and manage a team. I was never trained on that I think partially led to the burnout. Right. In 2018. And I remember my wife and I were on a cruise and I kept getting hit with emails and text messages. And I'm like, this isn't freedom. Like deals were falling apart. And I told my wife, I said, something has to shift. This business is just not aligning with the direction I want to go in. So I'll kind of pause there because there's stuff we can get into. But man, I was starting to really get burned out around 2018.
So this was 15 years out. I mean, I'm sure you had levels of burnout throughout, right? And you found a way to kind of reignite that energy in the business. And then for me, it tends to be like on cycles of 18 months to 3 years or so. And we talked at Carrot Camp about refueling that vision at least every 3 years. Right. On the personal side, I want to refuel it every year, right? Rewrite that. But on the business side, we've got to refuel it at least every 3 years. But oftentimes what happens if we don't have that clear vision where we're going, that we just end up chasing the next opportunity. We bring this person in. All of a sudden we have a Frankenstein of a business, and you end up growing to despise that thing because it was created by default, not by design.
Yeah.
Right?
Not just that, Trevor, but man, if I'm being honest with everybody listening, like I joined a high level community around that time, which was inspiring in many ways, but I fell victim to like thinking that because everybody around me was quote unquote scaling and everybody was doing 7 figures, like that's the path I needed to go down. And I had a vision for my life. You and I have been taught that, like, creating a vision for your life and then having a business that supports it. I had that. And yet I didn't honor it. Right. I just like, I see people on social media. I see people in these masterminds. I'm like, that's the path I'm going to take. And then a year later, my business, I shared this with you, my business felt like a prison. Like that's really what it felt like. And I'm like, now how do I like unwind this beast that was requiring $45,000 a month just to like, keep things moving?
Dude, I want to kind of dig into that dynamic that we all fall down that path of seeing those around us and then building a business that we think fits within the parameters of where we think people want us to go. Right. So let's kind of dive into that. So people are in a mastermind, they're on Facebook, they're whatever, they see from the outside in that people are more successful than them. What should people do instead? Hindsight 2020 for you. What should people do instead to really know if they should scale up the business or scale it back or change it? Yeah.
Well, I mean, one of the things that I've learned is that you can't scale chaos. Because if you scale chaos, it's guess what? You're just going to get, it's even more chaos, right? So I think you first have to get clarity, right? And you've shared so much content over the last couple of days about this, but get clarity about what you want your life to look like. You talk about the energy audit, right? Like what fills you up versus what drains you. What are the things that fill you up and are revenue generating, right? Versus the things that are not. So I think that is the genesis. That's the starting point. And then one of the things, man, that I've really taken away from Carrot Camp is like zooming out beyond 1 to 5 years, which I'm guilty of pretty much just staying within that range. But like, what do I want my life to look like in 10, 20 years? What's the business going to look like? And then ask yourself, like, if you want to scale, like define scale, like what does that mean to you?
Yeah, and we hear that at Carrot Camp a bunch. Hey, I want to scale.
That's right.
Scale what? And
that's right.
What does it mean to you?
And then you ask the question, like, what does it mean to you? And then you don't get a really good answer because I feel people following that path. Like, oh, I think I need to scale. But I don't think everybody's meant to build this big business with a bunch of employees. Right. So get clarity about what you want, why you want it, and then methodically go about and like aligning yourself with people that have that kind of business. Like I kept looking at social media and saying like, man, if that guy's doing that, I can do that. But I don't know the behind the scenes. I don't know what he's gone through to get to that point. I just see like the rainbows and the unicorns. But I don't see like the thunderstorms behind the scenes. So just be careful. Just get clarity and then methodically go about finding the people that are going to pour into you. Right. Like what you're doing with Epic and with Carrot Camp and the entire community. And then go about doing that because it's possible. Whatever you want is possible, but make sure it's about what you want, not falling to like what somebody else has.
Let's kind of go into the wholesaling business a little bit. And then I want to transition into that time period when you decided to leave the wholesaling business behind. But let's start with the wholesaling business. So you did 750 or so deals over 15 years. That's a lot of deals, dude. That's a lot of deals. So what were some of the things that you would do differently in that business if you were structuring it? So it could be team stuff. It could be marketing mix. It could be, if you were to go back to redesign a wholesaling business, one that you wanted to do, if you were to do that all over again, what would that look like?
Great question. First thing I would have done is I would have hired an assistant, right? I was basically my own assistant for the first 5 years. I wasn't running a business. I had no systems, no processes, no standard operating procedures. I was doing things. And then when I got to the point where I was going to hire, I didn't have anything documented. Right. So I would really, the E-Myth was a big impact. That was a mindset shift for me, the whole working on the business versus working in it. And man, I would get really, really good at 1 or 2 marketing channels. One of the mistakes I made is I would tackle like everything. And I would go like, I'd scratch the surface on a bunch of marketing channels, but I really wouldn't get good at any one. And that's one of the things that I would have done different, man, is I would have just gotten like I'm going to put the laser focus on 1 or 2 channels, really dominate that before I add something else. Man, I used to see people as competition versus collaboration, which is unlike me because I naturally want to connect with people. And there's so much more you can accomplish going further with the right people. So think about people. How can I collaborate with these people? right? I used to think in terms of how do I do something instead of like, who do I need to bring around me to help accomplish this mission, this vision? And so, yeah, man, I just get really, really clear. Look, one thing I would have done is I would have gone probably broader and not just in one market.
Oh, gotcha.
Right.
Okay.
Like, man, COVID, I think was an eye opener for so many people because we were belly to belly. And I had acquisition managers that, one day they could maybe go on 2-3 appointments. Now I got buddies that are doing deals over the phone. Just they've built out a model where it's now virtual. Right. So
that part's huge, right there.
Big time.
We see it all the time on the Carrot side, especially with how technology is today. People take their Carrot sites and they create location pages for different states and different cities and do that. That's good. So focus on 1-2 marketing channels, nail them. Go broader with those marketing channels. So to quote unquote scale, right? To scale rather than scaling all your marketing channels in one market, you would go, okay, let me take these things I already mastered and just plunk it into a new spot.
That's right. That's right.
Okay. I like it. Any other thing like on the team side of things? You mentioned you hired people without processes. Any roles that you would hire? You've got the executive assistant is number one.
For sure.
What's number two role for you?
I think that the answer to that question is going to depend, right? Like once you get clear and you go through the energy audit process, like in fact, we were just talking to somebody in your Epic group who he's really, really good at sales and he loves that role. And he was kind of asking you like, how do I start to get out of that role?
Yeah. People think they need to,
right? You might not need
to.
That's right. Right. So, ask yourself, like, what are you good at? What generates the revenue? Stick to that. And I gotta give you credit. What was the quote you said? Never delegate your genius. Right. Like I wrote that down, dude. That hit me right between the eyes, but everything else delegate. Right. And so, I remember for me, man, like I hated going to a seller's house, sitting at the like playing that whole song and dance. I didn't want to do that anymore. So I hired a lead manager and an acquisition manager. I liked the dispo side. I thought it was easy to sell the assets. And so, just get really clear on what it is you like, what you're good at, and then start to like methodically, right? Hire that out.
Dude, so you ran the business for 15 years. That's way longer than probably 99% of all wholesalers are going to run their business, right? And not because it's not possible, because I think number one, people get distracted. They find 12 other opportunities. They're successful wholesaling for 2 years. All of a sudden they think, man, now I'm a multifamily investor right out of the gates after doing 10, 20 deals. Which I think getting more experience under your belt is helpful. Not saying you can't go straight to multifamily or straight to self-storage. You can. But if you're going to start in wholesaling, get that cranking, really build a real business there and get real cash flow going. But for you, one thing you had mentioned that you wholesale the majority of the properties. Did you keep any of them? Did you build a portfolio? What was your mindset then?
So I'm so glad you asked that because that was going back to your last question. One of the things I would have done is I would have instead of wholesaling every house, I might have kept one out of every 4 or 5 I'd wholesale. Right. I was sharing on the last call how I came across an email in 2012 or 2013 on a house that I wholesaled that I think I made 15 grand on. That today, that house, I mean, I might be looking at close to 7 figures in profit, but I wasn't in a position where I could hold it, right? So I would have been more strategic about holding the right assets in the right areas. In fact, in 2018, as a result of that cruise experience, I told my wife, I said, let's start building a rental portfolio. And then I realized that there's nothing possible about building rentals. I started buying single family homes in Cleveland, Ohio, a particular area called Parma. And I got up to 4 or 5 houses and, a furnace would go out and my cash flow would be gone for the year. I'm like, dude, there's got to be a better way. I don't want all these tax bills and all these roofs. And so I happened to be coaching somebody who owned a storage facility. And I got an inside look into that asset class. It's been right under my nose. I'm like, this is everything I've been looking for. So, dude,
so you got that inspiration from that student you were coaching. You have your wholesaling business still. What kind of transpired for you to make the decision after 15 years to transition on? Because this is a decision, y'all. Like if you're watching this video or listen to the podcast, eventually you're going to have to make this decision, right? Eventually, because most of you listening to this are not going to wholesale for 45 years. You're probably going to add something else to your business, or you're going to expand it, or you're going to transform that business in some way, but your business probably won't look exactly like it looks today in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. So everyone's got to make this decision. When do I and how do I transition my business into the next version of it? Right. So for you, what did that look like? What were you wrestling with? Because you were the wholesaling guy for 15 years. What were you Yeah.
I was wrestling with a lot of BS I was making up in my head about how I would look. Would people think I was a failure? You know, I started this podcast called The Flip Empire Show back in 2016, which I'm still doing to this day. And I felt like I had to be the guy wholesaling. I had to be the guy doing real estate. And I started to just like fill my head with things that didn't come from the external. It was all internal. It was stuff I had to work through. And brother, I was going through an identity crisis. I'm like, in fact, I almost didn't shut down the wholesaling business because of the external. Right. And then I really asked myself, I'm like, first of all, people need to understand that most people don't care about you. Right. And I'm speaking to myself, like I was full of myself. I'm like, people don't care about me. I had to get to the point to realize that, like, what is it I want? What's going to like be good for me and my family? And then what I now know that I wasn't asking back then is, what does God want me to do with my life?
There we go.
Right. Like, that's the question I wish I would have asked back then. And fortunately, I think God started to open up doors in my life and in my business that led me down this path. But today I'd be asking, not what do I want? Like, what does God want me to do with my life? What does God want me to do with this business? How is it meant to impact and serve people? And man, back then I wasn't asking those questions. It was about me. And I quickly realized it's not about me. Like, what I do, real estate, wholesaling, like, that's just what I do for a living. That doesn't define who I am as a man, as a father, as a husband, as a man of God. And so, man, I went through a big like growth process during that phase. And once I got comfortable with the fact that, like, I asked myself a future pacing question. I said, Trevor, if I'm doing this business in 12 months, how am I going to feel? And I felt how I would feel on Sunday evenings when I had to go into my corporate job the next morning. Like, it was that bad.
Gotcha.
And I got to that point. I said, I don't know what I'm going to do next, but I'm going to trust God.
That's a killer question, by the way. Guys, write that one down, lock it into the brain. Ask that question now, right? Of wherever you are in your life or your business. That exact question, Alex asked, if I'm going to be doing this job or living this life or whatever that question is there in 12 months, how would I feel?
Man.
That's key. I like it.
And so I think God just started to like open doors for me, man, when I kind of just submitted and surrendered. As odd as that might sound to some people, like that's really the journey I was on. And I was more concerned about my team at that point. It's like creating a soft landing for them. And once I did that, my mentor told me, I encourage you not to go try to conquer the next mountain. Don't go start the next business. Take some time off, reflect, plug into the word, like get clarity about what's next. Some of the best advice I got, man.
Oh, dude. Dude, I love it. So you talked identity in there, and I want to press into that a little bit more because I think we all wrestle with that, right? We all wrestle with it, whether you're a wholesaler who's successful or a software company owner or whatever it is, that we for some reason lock our identity around what we do. Right. And instead of who we are. Right. And I read this book, Craig Rochelle, one of my favorite authors this last year or two. He wrote the book, The Power to Change. And it's really similar. I've got a bunch of copies of Atomic Habits over there, and I've given out a bunch of copies of those, but now I'm going to be swapping it with The Power to Change, because I actually love the way Craig approaches it more for me. And in there, he always says who before do, right? That's where I got that from what I was doing in the care camp yesterday. Who before do. And before you decide what you're going to do, we have to pull back on identity and like, well, who am I, or who do I want to be? And when I read the book, the thing that hit me with that was he said, well, who are you? Right. And then you have to go, well, I don't know. That's kind of why I'm reading the book. I'm wanting to hone that in. And he goes, well, I'll tell you where to look first. Is you look straight in scripture. Like, God tells you exactly who he made you to be.
That's right.
And so and listed out a bunch of it, and you go, oh my gosh. So there's no searching for who I am at my root. It's like, this is who I am at my root. Now I get to build from there.
Right.
And I was going through something similar about a year and a half to 2 years ago with Carrot, where as we're growing the company and looking for the right leaders to step in here and figure out where we're going next with things, I wasn't able to let go of certain things. And as I was diving in more and more and more, and I told Angie, our COO, this, and Chris, my co-founder, I'm like, I am having a hard time because I am Carrot is me. And it probably took 2, 3, 4 months for me to wrestle through that and really ask the question, well, who am I? Like, who do I want to be in a year and 10 years and 20 years? Looking at my life vision story and recognizing I had to read those. I'm like, oh my gosh, I am not Carrot is not me, because Carrot is not mentioned by name in any of these, right? But I am a person who owns businesses, and Carrot might happen to be one of those. So where can I really start to elevate other people to step in to do amazing things here? And I finally decoupled my identity from Carrot. I still love this company, absolutely passionate about what we're doing, absolutely excited about where we're going, and we're just getting started, I feel. But it's a conduit for impact. It's not my identity.
That's right.
And so, guys, if you're wrestling with that at all, I just recognize that you are a person who's going to transcend this business. And there's a person I talked about at Carrot Camp, who one of the top investors in the country, his identity was tied to his business so deeply that when the business started to be doing bad, he felt that there's no way out other than him making a choice that ended his life, unfortunately. But it was like, if the business is going down the tank, that is my identity as well. And he didn't know where else to go. Yeah. So guys, you are not your business. Your business is not you. It's a tool for impact. But dude, identity. So you wrestled through that. You had the inspiration from your student on self-storage. What happened next, dude? How did you take down your first deal?
Yeah, brother. So this was, let me rewind a little bit and share that, like, I came into the business overly confident, borderline cocky, thinking that because I had all this experience in single family, like a storage deal was just going to fall in my lap. Like, I'm being dead honest. Yeah. And in March of 2021, I looked up and I'm like, I'm not even getting close sniffing a storage deal. And I had to look at myself in the mirror.
After how long of?
This was about 3 to 4 months of like deciding to get into storage. Yep. And man, it was humbling because I had to look at myself and say, I wasn't doing the work. I wasn't making the calls. I wasn't doing a lot of the things that I learned in single family, which, by the way, are transferred easily over to storage. And so from that moment, I recommitted myself. About 42 days later, I went under contract on my first deal. A 43,000 square foot facility in Mississippi.
Dude.
And
how did you find a property like that?
Yeah, man. So great question. I was so clear on what I wanted, the type of asset, that I literally started publishing that with everybody. Gotcha. In other words, I would tell everybody, this is what I'm looking for. And one of the things people ask me all the time is, how do you find deals? Well, start by telling your ecosystem, your network, the people in your social media, what you're looking for. Yeah. And I had a friend of mine who happened to be coaching me at the time that knew exactly what I was looking for. So through a broker relationship, he called me and he said, hey, I got a pocket listing for you. Dude,
there we go.
Looked at it and got it under contract. Yep. And then I took a while to get it closed because we went through SBA financing. And that's a whole nother podcast. Yeah. But yeah, man, I lined up 85% SBA financing. I brought in an equity partner for the 15% capital injection and got into my first deal with no money out of my own pocket.
So do those deals, like, is there the 1% rule with those? Is it a different way that you analyze it? Yeah. Cash flowing from day one, kind of, what does that look like for you?
This particular facility was cash flowing from day one. Cool. And yeah, like one of the things people need to understand in commercial, and you know this, Trevor, the value is determined by the income the asset produces, what's called the net operating income. It's not like in single family where we're running comps on storage facilities to see, hey, what's sold. And so, there's some nuances in learning it, but it's a pretty simple business. We're renting space. And what I love about it is that it's a business with the benefits of real estate. It's not really a real estate play.
So multifamily, self-storage, pros and cons of both.
Yeah, multifamily is fantastic. For me, what I didn't like about multifamily, and I just automatically assumed, is you're still dealing with tenants and toilets. The operating expense ratio in multifamily is a bit higher, generally speaking, 45 to 50%. Whereas in storage, the operating expense ratio on average is 30 to 35, which means the margins are bigger. There's more room for error there.
And you don't have the big renovation costs. Like one of the deals I'm in right now, they're in trouble because their renovation budget, they blew it a long time ago. They needed $400,000 to finish this renovation budget before they can get a refi. You don't have any of that in self-storage.
I don't. We're concrete block buildings, metal roofs, metal doors. I mean, it's pretty simple. We're just renting space. So it just clicked for me, man. It's just a simple business, and there's a need and a demand for storage. When I started researching the different asset classes, I saw that storage is the most recession resistant of all the different asset classes. So,
dude, I want to break apart a couple things to give people a couple ways to think about storage, right? If they're going to step into this and get their first deal or their next, and they're going to crush it with their wholesaling and flipping business, or as an agent, or as a home services business, but they want to eventually build some income. What could someone expect income wise, like passive cash flow, or maybe not passive, it's the net cash flow at the end of the day. If someone wanted to make $10,000 a month in cash flow at the end of the day, what would they have to do in self-storage? Is that one bill? Is that one property? Is it 12? How many units? Like, what should they look for?
I know exactly what you're asking. I'd love to give you a black and white, but because it's storage, there's so many variables.
Cool.
Right? In other words, like, is it a value add deal? How is it being financed or structured? First thing I would encourage is, do you want to be an equity investor? Or do you want to be a cash flow investor?
Okay.
Are you looking to be somebody who has some capital and you're looking to like deploy it into the right deal? Right? Or do you want to be an operator? Do you want to find these deals, which is going to give you a bigger piece of the pie, but it's going to involve a little bit more work?
Gotcha.
And so, look, man, I have some friends that have a handful of facilities that are generating anywhere between 10 and 30 grand a month in net cash flow. But one thing I'll tell you is you're potentially 2 deals away from having a completely different situation financially.
Yeah.
I mean, I have one facility now that I have with a partner is generating roughly about $4,500 a month.
Dude.
Net, and that we're only at 63% occupied.
Dude, that's so, huge. So you guys could push that up to 7K or so.
Then, about 8K is what we expect. Yeah.
Cool. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So that's that one deal. In using that example, how many storage units is that one?
That's 186 units.
186. What would that cost? What did that cost you guys take that down?
So we bought that facility for $2.1 million.
Okay.
And we structured seller financing. Cool. So we got the seller to carry back a note for 90%.
Okay.
We got some killer, ridiculous terms.
Yeah.
Like no payments for an entire year, which really helped us when it came to stabilizing the property. But that's a unique property. It's in Amelia Island. Just the dirt itself is extremely valuable.
Yeah.
And so, man, it's just, there's so many different ways to structure these deals, Trevor, that like, I don't want people listening to this saying, well, I don't have 7 figures to get into storage. I didn't have 7 figures to get into storage. In fact, every deal I've done has been without any of my own money. So get clear. If you're really good at finding deals, go find storage deals and give them to an operator and carve out a piece of the equity. Maybe you're good at raising capital or just connecting people.
Dude, one of the cool things you just mentioned, if you're really good at getting deals.
Yeah.
It probably takes you about the same amount of work to get a small deal as a big deal sometimes.
100%.
And one of the things, guys, I'm gonna like demand of every single person listening to the podcast, start to make a plan to get some evergreen income stacked in there, because I don't want you to get to a spot where you were 7 years, 10 years, 15 years into any business. I don't care what business it is. Yeah. I don't care if you're the local convenience store owner down the road. I don't want anyone to get to a spot where they despise their business and then they don't have assets to show from that they could have been building from some of that cash flow that came along the way. Yeah. So guys, start the plan, whether it's self-storage or something else, start the plan. All right, guys. Dude, so where I know you're doing this for a living now. You're buying self-storage. You just locked down another deal when we're in here talking in the office. Yeah. You're working with other people to do the same thing. Yeah. Where, if someone's looking to learn how to get into it, where can they find you? Where can they learn how to get their first deal done?
Thank you, brother. StorageWins.com. Cool. If anybody's interested in connecting with me, having a conversation about storage, there's so many valuable resources out there. I've been putting out a lot more content as it relates to storage on the Flip Empire show. Cool. But to your point, brother, whether they work with me or not, I really want to encourage people to start to build a bridge or maybe consider adding this as a bolt-on.
Yep.
Right? Because a lot of the skills that we all know as an agent or as a single family investor can be transferred over to storage. Yeah. There's a few nuances, but it's pretty simple. It's nothing complicated.
Heck yeah.
Anybody can do this.
Dude, love it, man.
Yeah, man.
Well, guys, we're going to move this to a wrap, but here's a couple things I want to toss over your guys' way. Okay. Number one, make sure that you're really, really intentional about what you want to build. Like we talked at the early part of it. If you're looking a year out and you would not want to be in the business or in the job that you're currently in today, then you need to make a change. It's not like we talk about design versus default, right? If we do the default things that we're currently already doing because we don't want to make a change, we don't want to make a decision, then we will likely end up drifting, and drifting leads to failure. And that failure is going to be way harder to build out of and grow out of than making a decision now. Okay. So number two, then, if we want to design it, what is it that you want? What do you want out of your business? What do you want out of your life? And then really start to go, how can I design this business in that way? Okay. If you want to grow that wholesaling business, like Alex had mentioned, really start to recognize where are those skill sets. Drive 1 to 2 marketing channels really, really deep. Take those, master them, move them into different markets. And you can do that with Carrot or offline marketing. but master one or two and take them into different markets, and then start to take some of that cash flow, save some properties or pile it into an asset. If you have that, that's a winning combination, active income into the evergreen income, and just make the decision what that asset's going to be. Is the asset class single family? Look at the pros and cons. Is the asset class self-storage? Look at the pros and cons, and then dive into it and lock into the right people, the right mentors to help you guys get there. So, Alex, dude, appreciate you coming on, man.
Brother,
I got to get some more in-person right here podcast episodes.
This was fun, man. Dude, I want to publicly acknowledge you, man. You've been such aside from being a friend, man, you've been an inspiration, bro. Like, seriously, man. Thank you so much for like everything that you're doing for the community, for investors, pouring your heart into people. Like, you're as genuine as they come, my brother.
Appreciate you, buddy. So likewise. And thank you for making the leap and making a change, because I guarantee so many people are listening to this right now that don't know what to do and they're stuck and trapped in their business. Like you had said, you built a business that was a prison. My guess is there's more than one person watching or listening to this who is in their own business prison right now, and they need the courage and the story from somebody else to show how someone was able to get out of it. And so thank you for sharing yours. And guys, leave a comment on YouTube if this resonated, or if you have any questions, and hit myself or Alex up on Instagram, and hit us with questions as well. So awesome, buddy. Appreciate you, man.
Thank you, my man.
All right, guys, subscribe. We'll see you in the next episode.